On this program, beef cattle production, rice cultivation, and the culture of crawfish. Vast herds of cattle grazing in open ranges. Cowboys roping them with their lassos. We still think of cattle raising in these terms. But beef cattle production shed that storybook image long ago and has now become a full-fledged industry. For many of us, a tender, juicy sirloin steak is a real treat. All that wonderful flavor our taste buds detect is the result of the tremendous amount of care that goes into beef cattle production. It all begins on the vast ranges of a cattle ranch when a few bulls are placed with a cow and a heifer herd. After mating, the female's gestation period lasts about 280 days, the same as in humans. Cows begin calving at 2 years of age, producing 1 calf a year. During their first month, the calves feed exclusively on their mother's milk. They then gradually begin to feed on grass. When they are 6 to 8 weeks old, they are vaccinated. At the same time, the bull calves are castrated. Bull calves produce higher grading, more tender beef when castrated early. When the calves, both male and female, are about 3.5 months old, an implant is inserted under the skin of their ears to stimulate growth. The size of a grain of rice, the implant slowly releases a hormone into the bloodstream for a period of over 100 days. Growth stimulants implanted in calves increase their weight gains by 10%. The calves are periodically sprayed with insecticides, and a liquid is injected into their mouths to kill any worms in their digestive system. When they reach a weight of 230 kilos, at about 7 months, the calves are weaned. Prior to weaning, they are vaccinated again to help combat any infection that could arise from the stress of being separated from their mother. They are then put out to graze in lush pastures of wheat and oats. They will remain here until they have reached a weight of 340 kilos. Then at about 1 year old, the calves are transferred to feedlots where they are fattened up on a special diet high in sorghum, corn and barley, as well as forage, minerals and vitamins. This feed, along with fresh water, is available to them at all times, so they will eat as much as they want. Under these conditions, the animals gain 1.3 kilos a day, and by the end of 4 months, they weigh, on average, 500 kilos. At this weight, the cattle have attained the size required for slaughter. After they have been slaughtered, the quarters of beef are refrigerated. The quality of the meat is then graded according to various characteristics, including marbling or intermuscular fat. The more abundant the flecks of fat within the muscle, the more tender, juicy, and palatable the meat will be. Prime quality beef generally comes from cattle aged between 10 and 30 months. The degree of maturity is evaluated by examining the ossification of cartilage and bone, and the color of the muscles. Red muscles tend to darken with age. In order to improve the quality of beef cattle, animal scientists are attempting to identify the genes that affect the main quality traits of beef. To do this, they evaluate in the laboratory the tenderness of beef samples from various breed types. A first indicator of beef tenderness is calpastatin content. calpastatin inhibits cow pain, an enzyme that separates the different muscle components, and as a result, helps to tenderize the meat. So the higher calpastatin content, the less tender the beef will be. Through laboratory techniques, the calpastatin in a beef sample is isolated. A given amount of enzyme is added to it. Any surplus enzyme that was not inhibited is then measured. From that value, the beef's calpastatin content is deduced. A second indicator of beef tenderness is the collagen content in cooked beef. Collagen, a fibrous protein, becomes tougher as the animal ages. Collagen levels are determined by simulating cooking the beef in hot water. This operation destroys the collagen more or less, depending on its resistance. Meat tenderness is also evaluated by measuring its moisture and fat content. This is done by weighing beef samples before and after long drying out periods. Finally, the length of the structural units in muscular fibers, called sarcomeres, is measured by laser beam. The longer the sarcomeres, the more tender the meat. The results gathered during these various tests are then compared to the genetic background of the animal studied. Thanks to the findings of these studies, it will be possible to select the most attractive animals. By mating them, new breeds can be developed that will further delight our taste buds.
Beef may be to Americans what cheese is to the French, but the single most important food source in the world is a grain, rice. In the United States, a major exporter, rice is cultivated with the benefit of leading-edge technology.
Rice, that mythical cereal of Asia, is now cultivated in many other parts of the world where the climate is sufficiently warm and humid. The southern United States, for instance, produces enough rice to meet the needs of the entire American population, as well as those of other countries. Rice requires more water than any other grain. It is therefore grown in flooded fields. This type of cultivation is also effective in eliminating weeds, which do not tolerate submersion. To prepare a rice field, the ground must first be leveled out. Clay is the most suitable soil because it is sufficiently compact to prevent the irrigation water from percolating too rapidly. Small levees must also be built to retain the water in the field. Once this is done, the seeding can begin. Seeding may be done in dry soil with traditional farm machines, but it is generally done once the field has been flooded. The miracle seeds are then scattered over the field by airplane. Deposited on the soil surface, the seeds begin to germinate. An embryonic root and a primary leaf sprout from each seed. As additional leaves grow, plantlets emerge. They then sprout new leaves and secondary stems. The plant then begins to blossom. The flowers or florets are tiny and arranged in clusters along a tall, erect stem. This type of floret arrangement is called a panicle. The panicle contains both female and male organs, so the plant is able to self-pollinate. After fertilization, the florets accumulate the carbohydrate contained in the plant's leaves and stems in the form of starch. Each floret in the panicle gradually becomes a grain of rice. The weight of these grains eventually causes the head of the panicle to bend over. It loses its chlorophyll and turns brown. When the plant has reached this stage of development, the dams are lifted to drain the rice field and dry the grains. The grains of rice are only harvested when their moisture content has dropped to between 18 and 23%. Harvesting is done with combine harvester threshers, which separate the grains from the stalks. The harvested rice is then further dried to prevent damage from mold or fungi during storage. The rice is dehulled before being shipped to the consumer. This operation consists of removing the husks, the hard brown outer coating of rice, from each grain of rice. It yields brown rice, one of the most nutritious cereals. Brown rice is covered with a thin layer of bran. The rice may then be polished, a procedure that removes the bran coating to yield the traditional white rice. The white rice is then sorted by an optical detector, which identifies and rejects broken grains as well as colored particles. Finally, the rice is packaged and shipped to the market. Although rice has been cultivated for almost 5,000 years, it continues to be the subject of scientific research. Indeed, there are ongoing efforts to develop new and improved strains of rice that are more resistant to disease and insects. One technique, called hybridization, consists of crossing two genetically different individuals that present attractive attributes. First, one of the two plants to be crossed is emasculated. This is done by making a small incision in each floret head and withdrawing the male parts. The panicles of the second plant are then shaken over the emasculated plant so their pollen falls onto the latter's female parts. To prevent intrusion by any foreign pollen, a plastic bag is then placed over the panicles. The resulting seeds are then gathered. 6 or 7 generations are grown, always with the plants presenting the desired qualities. Ultimately, all these selections yield a relatively pure new lineage, which is laboratory tested. It is important that these grains stand up well to the dehulling and milling operations, and that the plantlets grown from their seeds are hardy and vigorous. This is achieved by simulating poor germination conditions, such as lower temperatures and less light. In all, it can take 10 to 12 years before a new variety of rice will be ready for market. Rice is the staple food of 2/3 of the world's population. A good thing, for rice is low in fats. It is also sodium-free and contains minerals and vitamins that are essential for a healthy diet.
Its climate, flat terrain, and abundance of water make Louisiana one of the main rice-producing states in America. For the same reasons, Louisiana is also a leading producer of crawfish. Over 80% of the world's crawfish production comes from that state alone.
The bayous of Louisiana are alive with small crustaceans to delight the palate of many a gourmet. These small crustaceans are crayfish, known in these parts as crawfish. Although they resemble a lobster, crawfish are considerably smaller and live in fresh water. Crawfish have developed a way of life perfectly adapted to the seasonal variations of the Mississippi. During the summer droughts, for instance, the crawfish withdraw into burrows. The burrows extend in depth to the water table, which in these regions is generally about 1 meter. The burrows are capped with the soil excavated when they were dug, so they maintain a humid environment. That plug of clayish soil traps the crayfish in the burrow until the fall floods. The water then softens the mud plug, freeing the crayfish from their burrows. When they leave the burrow, the females carry their numerous young attached to their tails. Once released into the waters of the bayous, the young grow, their ultimate size depending on the conditions of their environment. Aquaculture provides favorable conditions for cultivating crawfish year-round, as well as increasing production. Crawfish culture is usually carried out in shallow, rectangular ponds. At the center of the pond, small levees are erected to keep the water circulating. In one corner, an aerator is used to oxygenate the water pumped into the pond. The concentration of dissolved oxygen in the water is an important water management factor in crawfish aquaculture. Accordingly, dissolved oxygen content is measured on a regular basis with a small portable gauge. Very low concentrations of oxygen are sometimes observed when water temperatures go up. Oxygen levels also drop as the forage the crawfish feed on dies. Indeed, the bacteria that decompose these plants consume a great deal of oxygen. Whether decomposed or still lively green plants, forage is an important food source for crawfish. In addition, the stems of these plants constitute a support, a haven for a host of tiny creatures, such as insects and their larvae, worms, snails, and microorganisms, all of which provide the young crawfish with essential nutrients. Being a semi-aquatic plant, rice is particularly well adapted to aquaculture. Moreover, its growth cycle is similar to that of the crawfish. In Louisiana, for example, rice is seeded in April. Following the August rice harvest, the rice field is again flooded for the crawfish production. Sometimes stocked in the rice fields years before, the crawfish leave their burrows to continue their development in the pond. They can thus be harvested until the following year's seeding. Alternating the two cultures in this way promotes the healthy development of the crawfish without in any way affecting the rice production. Moreover, economically, it is a very attractive option for the farmers. Crawfish are usually harvested in open ponds with flat-bottom boats that travel from one trap to another very quickly. Crawfish traps come in a variety of shapes and sizes, but the most commonly used have a pyramid shape. At their base, 3 openings serve as entrance funnels. They are made of a metal mesh, selective for crawfish of a given size. The baits the crawfish farmer generally uses consist of bits of fresh fish. The crawfish are usually harvested as soon as they reach a length of 8 centimeters. Most, however, prefer them slightly larger, 12 centimeters. Various strategies have been devised to ensure a constant supply of crawfish of the size desired. One of them consists of using smaller mesh traps so as to catch immature crayfish. Another consists of introducing a toxic substance into the pond, in this case, ammonia. The concentration of ammonia must be high enough to kill the small crawfish, but spare the adults. Crawfish production is a thriving industry in Louisiana. It could even be said that these succulent little crustaceans are the Cajuns' caviar.
Crawfish is an excellent source of protein. Its meat is very low in fat, a mere 2%, and is easier to digest than red meat. So don't wait to visit New Orleans to savor this delicious dish.